Now, this is something that's come up a couple times from some of you. And as I said, we were going to be talking about this a little bit more. Well, let's do some basic discussion about some MLA. I've got a couple things here for you. I've got a handout, and this goes over a bit of information. That's got some good basic stuff. Some of it which we're going to talk about and covers also inside of the other PowerPoint. So we're going to probably circle back to this worksheet at a later date. We're going to start with the PowerPoint itself, but don't hesitate not to look at that. This is the PowerPoint. I've already got it open here. And this is the official PowerPoint from the OWL at Purdue covering MLA. Apologies there. So what is MLA? It's an abbreviation that stands for Modern Language Association. And it's basically a styling formatting method. Often, often used in the humanities. This is the official handbook, currently in the 8th edition. Most of this stuff, you can find this stuff online, unless you absolutely wanted to buy the handbook. Most of it's available for free. Okay? Now, what does actually MLA do? Well, it regulates document format, in-text citations, and works cited lists. Okay, those are the three key things. Now, they've made some additions back in 2016. I'm not going to sit on this for too much, but we'll come back to it. But the key information that I'm going to tell you right now, here and now, whatever MLA tells you to do, if a professor tells you to do it differently, always go with what the professor wants. Most professors stick, if they use MLA, they stick to the guidelines. However, some of them do modify things, and you'll see some things that I've modified here in a moment. So, here's one coming up. First of all, we use white 8.5 by 11 inch piece of paper. That's just a standard piece of paper. We double space everything. We use 12 point Times New Roman or similar font. Guess what? I only want 12 point Times New Roman, not similar font. There's me as an instructor calling an audible. We leave only one space after punctuation. We set all margins at 1 inch. And by the way, if you're using any of my templates, like I did for Essay 1 and for Essay 2, I've done most of this work for you. I preset most of this stuff up. And then, of course, we indent the first lines 1/2 inch, which is to basically say use tab. All right? If there's a header, I don't require one, but that would typically go up in the header section itself and would typically contain your last name and a page number. We use italics for titles, most things like books, movies, comic books. And of course, if we were using endnotes, which we are not, they are listed on a separate page in the works cited. Now, what goes into that first page? First of all, unlike APA, we don't have a title page. We double space everything, and we start with a heading. And a heading is usually your name, the instructor's name, the course, and the date in the upper left-hand corner where the cursor starts. Now, I typically like to list it as your name, the course, then my name, then the date. That's just a preference, and you'll see that on my templates. However, as long as you begin with your name and end with the date and have those two other things somewhere in between, you're fine. Okay? We center the title of the paper title. We don't underline it, put it in italics, bold it, or anything. And then if we need to create a header, we double-click up on the top box above the heading, and we insert the page number followed by your last name on the right-hand side. And it would look something like this. So you'll see here that person's name. Here's the header. It's up in that box of the margin. Here's the professor. Here's the course. Here's the date. Here's the title center. Drop down, indent, start typing. Okay? Simple as that. Now, when it comes to the use of subheadings, you'll see that there are two types. You either put a number or you put it in bold. And anybody who's seen my assignment sheets and my template so far, I go with option 2, the bold. I just think it looks better. Okay? I'm not going to linger too much on this because we're not going to make exceptional use of that other than the ones that I pre-established in the template. Now, the first big thing outside of formatting we're going to talk about today is I want to talk about in-text citations. And this is what we're going to focus our attention on today. We'll come back to the works cited material at a later date. But I want to focus our element on in-text citations because right now we're only really using one source for this essay, and that's our comic book. But we need to understand, how do I reference that comic book and cite it in my work? Now, here are the rules of in-text citations. Okay, it's a brief reference in your text that indicates the source you consulted. It should direct readers to a works cited entry. Okay, and if you look at the template for Essay 2, I already kind of put in there some basic rudimentary works for that. It should be unobtrusive. Okay, it's not meant to take up a lot of space. Okay. And in general, an in-text citation is an author's last name or abbreviated title with a page number enclosed in parentheses. That's what the general works. So it looks like this. Now, both of these examples you're going to see here, this first one and second one, are the same quotation. They are both correct. So look at this. Wordsworth stated that romantic poetry was marked by a, quote, spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, close quote, 263. The next one is the same situation. Romantic poetry is characterized by the, quote, spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, close quote, Wordsworth 263. The only difference here is that we selected the author's name to appear in the introduction and therefore did not have to put it in the in-text citation. But the key thing is that in both these cases we have the author's last name and we have the page number. Both of these are correct. Either way is correct. The purpose being is that either I read it here or I read it here. I go to the works cited. There it is, Wordsworth, William. This is a book, Lyrical Ballads, period, Oxford University Press. We abbreviate it, 1967. Now, if I was so inclined, I went and found this exact copy published by Oxford University Press, 1967. If I open to page 263, I should be able to find that quotation. It's a paper trail. It's creating a paper trail between where it appears in your paper, okay, reference to a works cited entry. That works cited entry could lead whoever, if they wanted to go see it for themselves, they could go find it. Okay. Same thing applies here. We have a work here, Burke, Kenneth, Language of Symbolic Action, Essays of Life, Literature and Method, University of California Press, 1966. Same quotation both times. The first time they used the author's name in the introduction, and the second time they didn't. Either is correct. The key thing here is that I have the author's last name, can lead me back to the works cited entry, and therefore if I found that specifically published book and open to page 3, I should be able to find this symbol using animal quote there. Okay? Again, paper trail. Now, what happens in the situation, and this won't happen with us this time, but this might happen in the future, because for the most part right now, we only need this bit of information because you're going to be working with a situation where you have an author and an artist. And so you will simply list both their last names. And if there is no specific thing that you're specifically citing, say, for example, you're summarizing, it would just be their last names. If, for example, you are quoting or referencing a specific page number, you would then include it and note how they write that. If you'll notice here, they write last name space page number, no comma, anything like that. All right. Now here's an example where we don't have a known author, and in this case here, we put an abbreviated title in quotation marks. This leads us back to this entry here. You'll see that the original entry was longer. We dropped the prepositional phrase in North America. We're allowed to abbreviate it a little bit, but we still need to leave enough for to make sure we clearly can find it in the works cited. And you'll see that this is an article that appears on a website published in 1999 that was accessed on the 23rd of March 2009. Okay. Not really worried about this first one, but the authors with the same last name, if when we get into multiple authors and you happen to come across two different authors with the same last name, all you have to do is add their first initial to make sure the distinction is clear. Okay. Now, when we're dealing with multiple authors, which we're dealing with right now, our example is best served by this last one right here. Strong and Ellis, writer and artist for us. Okay, so if I was doing All-Star Superman, which is Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely, I would be Morrison and Quitely in whatever page number. However, if you get beyond 2 and you get to 3 or more, you get to do this little thing where you get to write ETAL instead. What this means is that this is the name of the first author, and there happens to be at least 2, 3, 4, 5 other authors after them. But